Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. If you are noticing that the screen is a little bit smaller than you would be used to, it is, I believe, because it's been recorded live previously. I don't know why. I don't know why YouTube have done it, but that's what the issue is, if you're wondering. Like I say, I am live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. If you'd like to join us, that'd be amazing. Or you could just like, comment and subscribe. That'd be great too. Or you can just sit here and watch. That's amazing too. So, how many times have I said amazing in that one? But yeah, thank you so much. Right, tonight's story. It is a very young child, a very very young child. So there is a warning there. Obviously, if a child, if a case relating to a child is too much for you, I completely understand. Please come back to the channel. I do cover other stories. But if you can stay, excellent. So I'm going to start the story now. Thank you so much. Oh God, let's go. The harrowing Jayniah Watkins story. Okay. Now, Jayniah Watkins was born in December of 2014. Okay. She was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. I can never pronounce that right. Ohio. I think I've got that right. In a town called Hamilton. Now, Jayniah's parents is Deasia Watkins, and James Brown is her dad. Okay. Now, Deasia is 20 and James is 23. Okay. Now, previous to them having Jayniah, I'm not too sure of their relationship. I don't think they were together too long before she caught for Jayniah. But while Deasia was pregnant, Deasia and James get a home together, get an apartment together. Okay, now Deasia herself seemed just like a normal young girl. Looked like the relationship was going quite well. It seemed James doted on her. That's the impression I'm getting. Now, like I say, the backstory of them as a couple, I genuinely don't know too much about. I have searched for it. It just says they were getting on okay when they started seeing each other, but they weren't together long before she caught for Jayniah. Right now, as I've said, Jayniah was born in December of 2014. Okay, beautiful, beautiful little girl, adorable. Okay, little chubby cheeks, gorgeous little girl. Okay. But when we get to January the 25th of 2015, at this point, Jayniah is about 7 weeks old. All right. Now, a neighbour of Deasia and James calls 911. All right. And she says that all she can hear from their apartment is a baby crying and a woman, as she believes to be Deasia, screaming at she believes to be Jayniah, screaming at her, shut up, why God, why me, sounding very, very irritated. Okay. Very aggravated. And this had been going on for about an hour when the neighbour called. When the police turn up at the door, okay, when the police turn up at the door, Deasia turns up opens the door with Jayniah in her hands, in her arms, and she's not talking properly. She doesn't seem quite with it at all. The police are very concerned. Little Jayniah's crying, and like I say, Deasia just doesn't seem focused on what the police are saying to her. In the end, the police, for the safety of Jayniah, try to remove Jayniah from Deaja's arms, which she's dead against and tries pulling back to the point where they have to actually drag the baby out of her arms. Now, once they had done that, Deaja promptly passes out with her eyes open. So it's quite obvious there is something wrong with this young girl. And when James, obviously Jayniah's dad, is spoken to, he says, look, you know, since Jayniah's been born, Deaja has been acting a little bit strange. You know, he said something about her talking in tongues. Now, I don't know what that sounds like, I'll be honest. But he just says she has been acting very odd. So, Hamilton County Social Services are promptly involved. And Deaja is actually hospitalised. She's hospitalised for 3 days. And she's diagnosed with postpartum psychosis, not even depression, psychosis, which is, it's quite dangerous. It's quite severe. Now, I can't imagine what that would be like. I can't. But it must be awful to, you know, she says she was hearing voices. You know, she felt like there was something around her, spirits, etc. It must have been awful for her. I agree with that. But she has got a 7-week-old baby that's got to be protected. So Hamilton County Social Services do become involved. James is given custody of little Jayniah. Okay. Now, like I say, he had been telling the social services, look, she says she's hearing voices. She's talking about demons. You know, she's been acting very odd, like I've told you. So they think that the best outcome all round is for him to take custody of Jayniah and get Deaja as much help as possible. Now she does. She's given medication to control the psychosis. I don't know if I'm using the right terms. And eventually she's allowed to come home. She's allowed to come home with the medication. She is, you know, not forced, but she's warned, you have to take this medication every day. You have to. So she knows that. She also knows she can't breastfeed Jayniah anymore because of the medication she's taking. Now James was told Deaja would be able to return to the home, but he can't leave her on her own with Jayniah. He's not allowed to leave her on her own with her. It's not safe to, even though she's on the medication now, it's genuinely not safe to leave her with her baby at the moment, okay? Now, social workers would come out and they did checks at the home over the next month, and they reported that Jayniah was healthy, she was in good condition, she was doing well, she was thriving, she was okay. Now we get to March the 6th, 2015, all right? And there's actually a hearing held from the situation that happened on the 6th of January, okay? No, 25th of January, sorry, okay? So, what's happened is Deaja has actually stopped taking her meds. She stopped taking them and she's breastfeeding Jayniah again. Now, I can believe that maybe if she felt she's now in her right mind and she wants to breastfeed her child and she doesn't want to harm her child by breastfeeding her while she's on this medication, I would assume, I don't know, but I would assume that she just believes she'd be okay, and she wants to breastfeed hers, and she's looking out for Jayniah by not, feeding her while she's on the meds. So when I heard that, I believe she probably thought she was doing the best for her baby. Okay, courts didn't see it that way. All right. Now, James himself, obviously, James had been given custody of Jayniah, but then they found out that James isn't on the birth certificate. Okay. And when they question why he's not on the birth certificate, it's not that he's not her dad, it's that when they were in the hospital, now, obviously, we go to register our kids. I don't know if they register while they're in the hospital, but it was said that when they were signing, mother and father, he didn't have his ID, or his ID had expired or something. So he was waiting for his new ID to come through. So it's been said, and it hadn't come through yet. So the judge, without him being confirmed as being Jayniah's dad, was like, well, we can't hand her to you either. So the judge orders a paternity test to be done. And in the meantime, obviously, Jayniah can't be handed to her mum because she's not doing what she's supposed to have done, i.e. taking her meds. Can't hand her to her dad because they need proof that he's actually her biological father. So they're like, right, okay, social services again become involved. Now, they like to keep, kids with, if they can't keep them with their parents, they like to give them to family members. So after this, Deaja's aunt, and her name's Deborah Stewart, she is given temporary custody of Jayniah, and she's given temporary custody for for a period of 3 months. And I'm assuming that 3 months was to obviously monitor Jayniah, monitor Deaja, see how she's getting on with her meds and everything else. Obviously, by that point, they would have the paternity test back. Maybe they were looking at in 3 months, it might be possible to reunify the family. I think that's the right word. It's a reunification, I think it's called. So that's what they decide, and trying to keep little Jayniah with family, basically. Okay. So the agreement is, once again, that Deaja isn't to be around Jayniah on her own. Okay, she's not allowed around this child on her own. I believe maybe she can visit, but Deborah always has to be there, and she can't be on her own. Now, I have heard she can't be on her own with her, or she can't see her at all. I've heard those two things, but that's where we are in the story. So little Jayniah goes to live with Deborah, okay, and everyone's waiting for decisions to be made, and that's where we are on it. All right. Now, Deaja phoned Deborah a couple of weeks later, and she says, sorry, a week later, I apologise, a week later, and she says, she's very panicked on the phone, Deborah says, and she was begging Deborah to come and get her, and she's saying, can I come and stay with you? I don't want to be away from my baby, I'm heartbroken, And Deborah herself, she was struggling looking after Jayniah. And it's not because Jayniah was a naughty baby or anything else. I mean, how naughty can you be at a couple of months old? But she was, I wouldn't say an older lady as such, but she just felt with everything she had going on, she couldn't care for Jayniah as much as she wanted to, although she didn't want her going into foster care. So I think she thought, well, if I let Deaja move in, she can help with Jayniah. It'll be fine. We just won't tell anyone. So she goes and actually collects Deasia, brings her back to the house, and she allows her to move in. All right. So we get to March the 16th, 2015. All right. And it's 6 a.m. Now, a 999 call is made by Deborah. Okay. Now, I've heard the call. You can hear it online. And as the operator answers, you can hear Deborah screaming. Absolutely screaming down the phone line. Okay? And all she's screaming is, the baby, the baby. You know, and the operator saying, look, calm down. I need you to stop crying. Now, just before she spoke to the operator, you could hear Deborah say in quite a calm voice, I will say, not a calm. When you hear her reaction to the operator and you hear how she spoke a second beforehand, there is definitely a difference in her tone. And what she says is, she's not supposed to be here. Okay? Then the operator says 911, and she starts letting rip, and she's screaming, and she's very, very hysterical. And the operator says, listen, I just heard you. You were talking perfectly fine. I'm going to need you to stop crying. Now, knowing what you're about to find out, when you listen to that operator, knowing what I'm about to tell you, you would get very frustrated at the operator. And if you've listened to any amount of operators over the years, in certain cases, they're very calm down. They don't seem to hear the address properly. They don't seem to hear the name. They ask quite irrelevant questions, etc. So you would get frustrated at listening to this operator. There's no two ways about it. But how I tried to come at this was, if I didn't know. And if you come away from it and just hear that conversation without knowing what's happened, which you don't at the moment if you haven't heard this story, then maybe you might understand why the operator's talking the way she is, because Deborah is hysterical. You can't hardly make out what she's saying at all. So when the operator says to her, listen, I heard you a minute ago, you were talking normal, I need you to stop, I need you to calm down. She says, who was you talking to? And Deborah says, my son. Okay? So her son's name is Robert Stewart. Okay? And she hands the phone to Robert. Now, Robert, who would be Deasia's cousin, okay, because obviously Deborah's Deasia's aunt, this is Deborah's son, so it would be Deasia's cousin, all right? He does strike me as being older. He's got 3 young children, and what's happened is, the reason he's there at Deborah's house at 6 o'clock in the morning is he brings his kids there before school. Must be a routine they've got, and this is something he does every day before school, and he comes to his mum's house. So that's why he's there. And when he comes on the phone, he just says, look, miss, and he's very polite. He's very polite to the operator, and he says, look, miss, the baby is on my mama's kitchen counter and her head is smashed. This is what he says on the phone call, okay? And the operator, this is where you may get frustrated. She's like, well, can you go and see how the baby is? And you can see him trying to hold it. And he says, look, miss, the baby is deceased, okay? And this is in reference to little Jayniah, who at this point is only 3 months old. Okay, she's 12 weeks old. All right. And you hear him saying, I don't know where my cousin is. I don't know. And obviously referring to Deasia. He says, I don't know what's going on. He says, I've just come in the house. He says, my child, and what had actually happened is, as he's brought his kids in, the kids have run ahead of him. One of them has got to the kitchen, seen this absolutely harrowing sight. He's walked behind his child, also seen this sight on his mother's kitchen counter. Okay? He's turned his kids around, took them outside, come back in, gone to his mum's bedroom, woke her up, told her what's happened. She's come out and saw little Jayniah on her kitchen counter, and then they called 911, which is why her reaction was the way it is. Okay? So he says, and he explains that, and he says, listen, lady, the baby's head is open. All right? Now, and he says, it's a very violent scene. He says, I don't know what's happened. I can't tell you. I don't know where my cousin is, but it's a very violent scene. All right? All you can hear is the aunt screaming, I'm going to jail. And we believe she was saying that because Deasia obviously she shouldn't have moved in. It was against the court orders. All right? So when the police arrived, okay, they see this unthinkable sight in front of them. All right? Little Jayniah is pronounced dead at the scene. Okay, she's 3 months old. She's 3 months old, this little baby is. All right? And the police, while the ambulance are with Jayniah and she's pronounced dead, the police are looking around the house and they go into a back bedroom. And when they go in there, back bedroom's a little bit, I wouldn't say trashed. I've seen pictures of it, but it's definitely messed up. And they see that someone's in the bed under the covers, and it's Deasia, sorry. And what they said is she was covered. You could just see her hair at the top of the bed. And when they pull the blankets back, she's got blood on her. She's got blood on her hands. There's blood on the sheets. But she doesn't speak. She doesn't say anything at all. They take her out of the bed. They handcuff her. And they take her out of the house. All right? Okay? Now, Deasia and Deborah and her cousin, Robert. It is Robert, isn't it? Yeah, Robert. They're all brought down to the station for questioning. Okay. Now the aunt, inconsolable still, in the interrogation room. Now the interrogation is on a channel called Explore With Us, or it can be shortened to EWU, they call themselves, but it's Explore With Us. The actual interrogation is on there, and you will see the aunt. She's hysterical still. It's the only word I can use to describe her. She's got who I believe is Robert in there with her, trying to calm her down. In contrast to that, you've got Deasia in the other room, kind of humming to herself, but not crying. No reaction whatsoever, really. So, when they go in to speak to Deborah, she's explaining, she's trying to say, look, I don't know what happened. I know she shouldn't have been living there, but I don't know what's happened. She's just screaming, that poor baby. They can't really get much sense out of the aunt because of how upset she is. They then go into Deasia. They can't get anything out of her, not because she's hysterical, because she's practically catatonic. There's nothing. And they try everything. Over the next 6 hours, they try everything to cajole this woman into telling them something, telling them what happened to your daughter. Why have we found her in the state we found her? You've got blood on you. They tried soft, they tried good cop, bad cop, they tried everything. There is nothing from this girl. Okay? So she's taken to hospital. Now, she's obviously off her meds again. The medication she was ordered for the second time to take. Now, I don't know. I don't know why. You know, if maybe the first time, okay, the first incident when the police come out, she wouldn't have known, okay? She's taken to hospital. She's sent home. She knows she's got to stay on these meds. Now, maybe when she was feeling okay again, maybe she thought, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm wanting to breastfeed a child. Maybe then. But once they went to court and Jayniah was removed from both of them, you would think that staying on that medication would be first and foremost, because she would know at that point that she can turn. She would know by then. But she didn't. And she came off her meds again. Okay? So, the autopsy for little Jayniah. Okay? Now, I've said what a absolutely harrowing sight it was on the Deborah's counter. Okay? Now, little baby Jayniah, the autopsy showed she had a broken right arm. Okay? She had too many stab wounds to actually count. Okay? But the majority of them were to her little head and face. She was stabbed in her eye. And then she was beheaded. And that's what Robert's little girl ran into. And then Robert walked into. And then Deborah woke up to. She was 12 weeks old. And there was also, okay, there was a knife in little Jayniah's hand that was placed in her hand. Okay? I will tell you about that in a second. Okay? But after a few days, Deasia, she's brought back in to the police station. She's had a med. She's back level again. And it's a very different interview to the first one. All right. Now, is she talking normal? No. She's talking still very monotone. But she's answering questions this time. She's acknowledging them talking to her this time. Okay. But during this interrogation, she begins to blame Deborah, her auntie. She says it was her who did it. She killed Jayniah. And I'm talking normal and in sentences. She wasn't doing that. It was kind of very 1-2 word answers. But basically she was saying that Deborah sleepwalks and she must have done it. Okay, so she's completely blaming her aunt here for what happened to Jayniah. All right. But then eventually she messes up because she claims that she never came out of the bedroom. She claims she never saw Jayniah. She never saw the state her daughter was in. That's what she claims. But she says she put the knife in her hand. Deborah put the knife in her hand. Now, no one had told Deasia about the knife being put in little Jayniah's hand. So, you know, it was there. She was done. She was done. The police knew she was done. She didn't know at that point. She didn't even know she'd messed up, I don't believe. But they completely switched tactics. They're quite abrupt with her then. Till eventually, she starts to admit it. She admits it was her. Okay? And then she explains what actually happened that night. Well, it was early hours of the morning. Okay. And she says what it was. She went to change Jayniah. And what's really frustrating now, Deborah was supposed to be the custodian of Jayniah. She knows that there's been a history with Deasia. She knows that. Surely she must know that Deasia wasn't taking her meds either. That I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know if she knew or not. But surely just being on the safe side, you would keep the baby in with you overnight. Just me. Okay? But no. She was in with Deasia. Okay? And Deasia said she went to change her nappy. Alright? And she says that Jayniah was crying. And she says, and I couldn't get to change her. No, I don't. No. Jayniah was 12 weeks old. So I wouldn't imagine she was thrashing about too much. You know, we know as kids get to 6 months, 9 months, you know, you try and change them and they're crawling off or they're moving or they're this, that and the other. I don't think that was the case with a 12-week-old. Okay? But she says she didn't get to change her and she just kept crying. And she says, so I just got frustrated and I threw her across the room. And she's so monotone when she's saying it. I've actually even got a bit of emotion in my voice when I'm saying it. She's just deadpan. And she says she threw her across the room. And she says, and she didn't die. So she said, I walked over and then I banged her head into the bookshelf. And you can see the bedroom and it looks like a solid wood chest of drawers. Don't know why she's calling it a bookshelf. Chest of drawers. And she says, I banged her head against that 4 times. She says, and she still didn't die. So she goes, then I hit her over the head with a big old stick. That's what she says, a big old stick. She said, and I hit her across the head with that 4 times. I don't know why 4 in particular, but it was 4 times. And she wasn't dying fast enough. Okay. She says, I took her to the kitchen to finish her off. And the police were saying, but how do you know? How do you know she wasn't dead? And she goes, well, she was still twitching. I could still hear her. So I took her to the kitchen to finish her off. And she said she still wouldn't die. And she said all I kept on saying was just die, die, die. And they says, then what did you do? She goes, and then I cut her head off. And they ask her, they say, how many times did you cut her? She says, until it came off. Just like that. Exactly how I'm telling you. It's shocking to watch the interview. It really is. And then they say, why did you put the knife in her hand? Or she says, I put the knife in her hand. And they said, why did you do that? She says, because then people would think she did it to herself. Wow. Wow. She thought they'd think Jayniah had done it, had beheaded herself. And then they say to her, do you feel bad? And she says, no. She actually says, no. Now, don't forget, this is 3 days after being hospitalised. I mean, she's been in hospital for 3 days. They've been getting her straight on her meds. And this is after that. And they say, do you feel bad? And she says, no. The county prosecutor, Joe Dieters, his name is, held a news conference with the coroner, Dr. Samarco, I believe her name is, and he says it was one of the most disturbing cases he's ever come across, and he says it's also a good reason to retire at some point, which I thought was you know. He does say he feels family services did do their job. You know, she was removed. She was then given to her dad. The hearing was held. Social services did visit up to 7 times while she was with the dad, and then while she was with the aunt. You know, they removed her from both of them, gave her to a family member under the understanding. Deborah agreed that Deasia or James wouldn't be, you know, wouldn't be alone with Jayniah. You know, he says that social services in this instance, child services, sorry, they did everything they could. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't. I mean, it was all very quick. It was said that child services had only seen Jayniah a few days previous, but they just didn't know that Deasia had moved into the house. Okay. Now, in 2016, Deasia was actually offered a plea deal, okay, and she rejects it. And her defence were going after the insanity plea, okay. But the prosecution was saying due to the fact that she not only afterwards went back to bed and tried to hide when the police came, the fact that in her interview she tries to lie and blame it on her aunt, they're saying that shows an element of she did know what she'd done. She did know it was wrong. I think an insanity plea is you've done it, but it's not that you don't care, you just don't think you've done anything wrong, you don't get what the problem is, and they were saying she knew she did something wrong. So the prosecution weren't having it at all, so they got many psychiatric evaluations done on Deasia until she was finally able to stand trial. She was, you know, admitted that she was sane enough to stand trial. And then in February 2017, at this point, Deasia's only 22. She's still very young. And she shocks everyone and she changes her plea. And she pleads guilty to murder. Okay? Now, I don't know how I feel about this, but the sentence that Jayniah Watkins was given, was 15 years with a minimum of 13 years before she'll be eligible for parole. Okay? And I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know how to feel about that at all. I think it shines a light on, someone had mentioned it, the terminology earlier, postpartum, healthcare, mental health care. It shines a light on the need for that. I also don't think all fault can be removed due to the fact that she knew that if she came off those meds, you know, she knew she could turn. So, you know, obviously the first time it happened, when the police first came round to the apartment, like I say, you know, she wouldn't have known. It's her first baby. She wouldn't have known what she was feeling and what was going on and why she was feeling these feelings. She wouldn't have even known what she was feeling was wrong, I imagine. But once she was levelled with medication, I don't understand why you would stop taking. Maybe she stopped because she felt she was okay. And obviously then they went back to court. But to be put back on the meds again and to come off them again, I just feel to remove all accountability from her, which they haven't, because 15 years, even 13 years, it's still a very long time. But she beheaded her baby. And I just don't know how I feel about it. I don't. I don't. I don't understand. I'm not trained in any sort of way, shape or form in mental health care at all. I don't know anything about postpartum psychosis. I don't know much about postpartum depression. I don't. So I won't say, I can't judge for that. I just, I just don't know how I feel about this case. I mean, she does say at her trial that she did love Jayniah. So from her saying, do you feel bad? And she answered no. 2 years later, she's saying, yes, I did love her. You know, I just don't know how I feel about this case. And I thought I wanted to do this story, one, because it was, oh, just utterly horrific. And this little girl, she only had 12 weeks on this planet. So I think, you know, it's not a well-known case. So I wanted to highlight it, you know, and have her name remembered. But also I thought to highlight, you know, that these cases are out there, and these issues are out there with women after giving birth to their children. And I just don't know how I feel about the case at all. I genuinely don't. I mean, she is being held accountable. Um, you know, James, Janiah's dad, the police did say that he'd been talking, you know, not bad about her at all. I think her family would, I suppose, because they knew who Deasia was, and this person wasn't recognisable to them, who she turned into, in just, when you think about it, what, 3-4 short months, you know? So I just don't know. I don't know. It's just a very, very, very sad story all round. So yeah, that was the harrowing Jayniah Watkins story. Just an awful, awful case. Very, very sad. And just a beautiful, beautiful little girl. But if you do want to see the interrogation, like I say, it's Explore With Us. Very good channel. And it does show her interrogation. And you'll see what I mean about the monotone voice once she has come back from the hospital for her second interrogation. And it's haunting. It's frightening. So, yeah, but thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And like I say, I am here live every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m, if you'd like to join me. And if you'd like to subscribe, I'd really appreciate that too. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And I will be back on Thursday again. So thank you so much. Thank you.